I'm pretty sure everybody that I've ever worked with knows this man. Today, I have with you a cinematographer based out of Toronto, originally born in Russia, Dave Griff. We are going to get to know his story. And at 16 years old, moving from Russia to Canada and now becoming one of the busiest men in this industry, this story is not something you're going to want to miss. So we're going to dive deep into his mind as to how he works, his perspective, his philosophies. So if you're looking to get into this field, you're going to want to stick around and hear what he has to say. So welcome to the Apple Box Podcast. I'm your host, Danny Lau, and I'm here alongside my co-host, Anthony Valtsinas. Let's get into it. Yeah, holy shit, it looks really good. This is the one you posted on your Instagram, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's an old one at this point, but
yeah. Are you working on a new one?
The amount of times you're working, you just got to keep.
Yeah. It's also do you find it's hard to when you're working so often, to update a reel is kind of your last priority probably?
It's also so hard to find projects you want to put on your reel because a lot of stuff we do these days, it's there's a lot of not boring jobs, but just jobs that kind of start looking the same to
generic,
you. Where you're just
kind of you're using the same techniques.
Same plan, because a lot of clients that pay the money we want to get paid, it's usually not generic stuff, but it's really similar, and then it takes a great director and a great client that is open to experiments to try something different. But at the same time, all the clients are not sure if they're ready for the different, right? So
you work a lot in totally different types of ranges of production. So what's one of the highest range of productions that you work on?
I really love working, I've done a few features in positions of gaffer and gimbal operator and camera operator, because I own a few gimbals, cameras, and a lot of lighting, DMX controls, and all that fancy toys. But I really love working commercials because, first of all, in commercials, you get to work with a different amplitude of things. It's kind of bouldering, where it's smaller routes, but more energy goes to one particular project. At the same time, when you're an owner operator of gear, whether lighting or camera, it's much easier to get your money worth through commercials because you run on a daily basis. Whereas if you go to features, you have to fight with big names such as Whites, Sim, and 2D and other names. And usually the way it works with your PM on projects like that, it's, hey, I have all this gear and that's the price I'm willing to come with. And then they just go get a quote from, let's say, Whites. And they ask Whites for the biggest discount ever, which is I've had some projects where it was a 3-week feature film for television. And then Whites gave them the rate of 1.5 days for 3 weeks of the entire show.
Wow.
So I had to literally give my gear for the same price. Otherwise they would just go to
match
Whites.
them. Oh,
yeah. And it's 1 day, 1.5 day rental for 3 weeks of the show.
That's
crazy.
Yeah. Holy crap.
It's basically free at that point.
Some projects do that. Some projects are more, I don't want to say noble, but they just have bigger budgets, and I've done those as well. And those are really nice to work with, where they already have a set budget for kit fees of the professionals, and they're just not gonna really fight with you. But you always have to be really versatile with the productions you work for, and especially find your own value in whatever you do, whether it's a smaller budget project, but this idea is going to bring you something good for your reel, or good connections, or it's going to grow into something bigger.
Some kind of benefit outside of financial.
Every project needs to have at least, I usually put check marks in my head, whatever project I'm approaching, whether I'm going to meet these people and I'm going to get paid and I'm going to do this, but at least there needs to be 3 of those things. Because otherwise it's just not really appealing to take certain projects.
So do you think that kit fees, having a kit fee, does that determine whether or not you get the job if they take your kit fee?
It totally depends on the job. If it's a great job that, especially if I do, depends on the role, but usually if I do cinematography, makes more sense to just bring my own stuff, and just because you're owner operator. So if it's even a project that cannot afford my kit fee, or they need a discount, but then the project itself is amazing, and I do a lot of projects even for free that I just want to do with my friends because I really love their vision, and I'm more willing to come to those projects and just help them out and bring something amazing together. Whereas there are some projects that are just really not boring, but there's like nothing really interesting to me there. And if there's also no money included in the project, I'm probably gonna turn it down, because then why would I even consider it?
Yeah.
So what does appeal to you then? Well, what kind of project does appeal to you?
I really love projects with obviously a really good story behind it. I really like working with directors that know what they want, and they have a great style of narration and a great style. So whenever I approach a director or I work with one, I always, try to know them as a person first and see what inspires them, talk about shows and visuals that they have, talk about, places where they go, hang out, or like you have to build that friendship bond. So then, because whenever we work as all us visual artists, it's not just a job, right? Like you go outside your home and you start seeing things, and then like you notice something and you put it in your swatch book. You take a picture of it, and then like when you find a person director that kind of has the same approach to whatever they do, and you just kind of like sometimes I work with people and we're like driving the car and it's like super silent moment, and then all of a sudden we both like look at the same person, and then you're like, oh yeah, like that's why, because you have exactly the same direction of seeing things, and that's when the chemistry is there. So there's definitely a few people I've been working with for like the last maybe 4 years that I always were on the same track. We're friends, we're always discussing projects, treatments, and like places we want to pitch and do stuff. And I really like working with those people, as well as I always try to meet new directors that I can collaborate with and do whether spec projects or commercial projects or documentary projects. But yeah, at the same time, there's different levels of it. Yeah.
So you're scouting for directors as like, obviously they're probably scouting for crew like you, but you're always on the lookout for maybe directors who have vision that can align with yours or stuff?
It's mutual, yeah. Like sometimes, like someone would reach out to me and they're like, hey, we saw your stuff, it's amazing. Sometimes I want to work with someone and I would just like find ways to, meet up with them and be like, hey, like, we both been, looking at each other. Maybe we should do something. That happens as well. But there's definitely like, and I know from other experiences of like other cinematographers that there's definitely always some directors people aspire to work with. So especially if you see their stuff and you're like, hey, like this is exactly how I would, not exactly, but like this is the
style,
the variety of things. Yeah, like the style
feel.
of things. I would also like see some of my work and I can definitely contribute to it with like this and that. And then you just kind of like try to sell yourself, whether your human skills or especially if you approach a director, and because again, like a lot of like working with directors on projects that have budgets is amazing, but a lot of times you first have to build a connection so you can come to the point where you're doing the projects that are bigger with them. So sometimes you may just approach them with an idea of like, hey, let's do something a spec, or if you have an idea you wanted to do, let's work together, and if it works out for us, maybe we can something more in the future.
So when you're looking working with directors and stuff like that, I know there's a lot of people out there, a lot of directors out there who are always kind of looking for the DP that's right for them. And I think as DPs, we are looking for the right director that kind of suits, that allows us to kind of exercise how we like to express our work. And that's like back to what you said of directors who tell the type of stories that we want to that we feel our work fits into. So what do you search for in a director? What are some pros and cons that you look for in a director?
I always, it's like working with directors, it's like getting tattoos. Like sometimes you just look at it, like I have a lot of tattoos for the reference, and I never considered like or spent more than 15 minutes per tattoo, just because when I have a vision or an idea, I just get it done and I never regretted anything.
Wow.
So it's same with directors. It's like sometimes you see them as a person, like their charisma, just the way people perceive things, and then you're like this person has something in them. Whether it would be just there are a lot of young directors, emerging directors that are insane. There's a lot of established directors that are also obviously known for things they do, but I think it just takes a person with the confidence and person with the style and a vision, and you know, some like background. I remember like one time one of my friends, another DP, mentioned to me that, you know, it takes a person with a fucked up life to be great at something
100%,
as an artist.
Yeah, 1000%.
Not to put it directly there,
Yeah,
but
But
like,
it's true though. It's
Yeah.
it's true. Yeah.
I would say like I love to see directors with a life experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially, you know, when I see someone who not struggle, but I know that their like, you know, path wasn't always smooth and shiny, and then they had to, you know, get out of their box and maybe move somewhere, or, you know, they had to like work somewhere else before they started directing, and then they just, you know, got to where they are.
Because that's what makes the story authentic.
Yeah.
Right. When you're able to tell a story that you feel or you've been through, and is
You
the
have to be able to
emotions-
experience it.
You have to be able to experience it, but like
Yeah.
not only be able to write the story, but how do you direct the actors? How do you find the actors that are right for it? How do you find the style of actors that are the right talent that can kind of perceive that emotion properly? And it's authenticity ultimately that I feel, at least we're not going to get into this, but ultimately I think is missing in a lot of modern films these days, that I think was very, very prevalent in the old films. I wouldn't say old, but like when I was younger, you know, the Scorsese's and all that kind of stuff like that during that era. And I always found that like people were just more authentic. Scorsese stuck with his New York, you know, that type of vibe, and everything that he did had that kind of vibe. So he
Big
stuck with
things,
those
yeah.
actors. Exactly. Right. And so, yeah, absolutely. I think it's the same thing. Like when I look at the people that I work with, like we always joke all the time together. Like we look at each other like, how fucked up are we? Like, we're fucked up, aren't we? We're like, we're pretty fucked up.
There's levels to
You know,
fucked
there's
up.
levels to fucked up, but we're fucked up, you know, and we're like,
It's the frequencies, right? Like you
Yeah.
have to make
Yeah.
sure that you first connect on the human level, and then, and it's funny because like a lot of directors that I end up establishing a relationship with, it never starts, or it sometimes starts on set, but a lot of times it starts at a party or like a friends
Yeah.
gathering,
Right.
Or, you know, like the other day, like tomorrow I have a work with a director, and like we met on the Scout a few days ago, and then when we met, we realized we're like drinking hard on like this other guy's birthday a few months ago, and I was like, oh shit, I already know you. I didn't know you direct, but nice to see you. You
it's weird
know.
how that
Yeah,
works.
So it's like sometimes it just happens in a snap, and you just feel it's the right person. You kind of like I'm, you know, I feel that I'm like a little bit weird in my personality. We're all artists. We like try things, we jump roofs
we
and
all
do
are.
stuff. So like
you
whenever
rock climb like almost all the time. Like he's the only rock climber I know.
I'm trying,
Or is
it's
it
pretty cool.
bouldering? What's the term?
Yeah.
bouldering, yeah, hiking.
Bouldering's
I
the
love
word,
it all.
okay.
I just love being
Yeah.
outdoors. But
Just wait for your story where you on Instagram where you post that.
I was like, there he is
of you
in his
just
PJs. like,
I know, wait for the pants.
That's Dave.
It's
That's
comfy,
the
yeah,
pants.
yeah.
You know, it's the character. That's it.
Finally, he has a day. He has like an hour off. He can go bouldering.
So let's scale back a little bit. Let's turn back to you starting.
Mm-hmm.
You came from, where were you born?
I moved. I'm originally from St. Petersburg, Russia. So I moved to Canada when I was 16 years old by myself,
Oh, wow.
which was pretty interesting thing I did. Yeah.
That's incredible.
Wow. So when you came to Canada, did you know you wanted to be a filmmaker before?
I've been doing photography since I remember myself. I think the first instance of me getting a camera was when I was like, I think even when I just learned how to read, I already had like a point and shoot in my hands for my dad.
Okay.
And then when I went to like grade 2, my brother gave me his DSLR. It was a Canon 480D that he bought for like to use with his wife, but couldn't figure out. So pretty much from there, he gave me the manual, and I just like figured that stuff, and I was like, okay, that's fun. And then my parents saw that like they really like that I was interested in all that stuff, and my dad also had like a company that does food supplements. So like he introduced me to his operators that would like shoot his corporate events. So they would like teach me how to just, you know, like pan the camera and just like, you know, keep the shot straight of the
Yeah.
corporate job.
Corporate jobs, yeah.
So that was like
Interesting.
super easy as well.
Yeah.
As well as one thing I really value in my family, that like a lot of things, but one of them is since the beginning of things, my parents started collecting photo albums. So like my mom kind of like gave me this role of taking pictures for all the family events and all the gatherings. So then she can put those in the albums, and it was like an official thing.
Yeah.
And I think by the time I moved to Canada, we had like 45 family albums, and they're like super huge as well. So it's like the like not responsibility, but like how much important, like the sense of importance she put in those albums also really like put me into like, you know, making sure everything is proper. And yeah, I was doing video as well. Like, I traveled a lot with my parents. So like my dad got me like a little DV camera when I was, I think, like 10 or 11. So whenever I would like travel, I would have like a point to shoot in one hand and like DV camera in the other, and just kind of like make sure I capture all those moments for my family.
Yeah.
And it all just started there.
Wow. Yeah. So like when you got into, now you're in Canada, you're 16 years old, you said? You're 16 years old. So how did you end up marketing yourself from there?
Honestly, life was not choppy, but there were different moments. Because I first got in grade 10, and I was already doing like some portraits and other stuff for my friends, doing a lot of street photography, everything you get access to. As well as we had a class, like a media class in my high school, and the guy who was in charge of that, he was my good friend. So even after school and during school, when I needed some gear, like I was shooting Welt, I was doing like photos for Welt, and I just like approached that guy. I was like, hey, I need like a few camera buddies. I know school has like a few 5D Mark IIIs. You mind giving those to me? He's like, don't tell anyone. Okay, you got them for the weekend. Just make sure they don't scratch. I'm like, yeah, I'm taking them to the crowd pit. It's all good, bro.
And then you shot Veld again this year, right?
After COVID, it was come back to Weld. My friends contacted me, but this time it was for gimbal work.
Yeah,
because now I do like more of that stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, and yeah, like back to those days. Yeah, doing a lot of photos, mostly photos.
So was it like a lot of free work that you're just kind of taking whatever was there?
Not even free work. I was just always, making sure I have a camera by my side. Yeah, just for fun, taking some portraits for friends. And even nowadays, like I can't live home. I'm like glad there's iPhones these days, and I'm waiting for my 14 just so I can get that 48 megapixel camera. But like taking pictures is not like thing I do for money. Is just a thing I do for just staying sane throughout the day and coping mechanism.
Yeah.
And I think that's why it started when I was a kid, because like my parents were also fighting a lot, so it's like whenever they have one of those, I would just take a camera, take a walk.
Became like your almost what do you call it, your harmony zone, like where you get at peace with yourself. It help you escape.
Yeah.
That's interesting. That's the same thing for me, because I was going to ask you, like, when you're taking photos, are you more at peace when you're with people taking photos or by yourself?
I like to be by myself. I like to focus on things, because whenever I like see something, I even like back when I was younger, I would always, even if I don't have a camera and I'm like sitting on the TDC and I look at someone, I'm like staring at them. It's weird, but then I'm asking myself like, why? What makes it so special? And then I noticed that like this person I'm staring at, they have curls. And I'm in the TDC, so we're like passing through the bridge, and there's cutaways of hard light, and that's why and they're like also wearing a color that matches the TDC colors, and then there's like backlighting through their curls, and I kind of started taking myself on analysis, like what exactly makes me stare at this person as a fucking creep.
I know, I do the same thing. It's beautiful.
Like,
I do the same.
I
do the same thing. That's so funny, because like on one of my scouts, we had one of our buddies who's just starting out. And I remember on the scout, I was just kind of like pointing things out, because he wants to learn how to DP. I don't know if he wants to be DP, but he wants to learn. So I was just sitting there. I was like, just use your eyes, look around. There's just beauty everywhere. And I was like, see that right there? Bam, shoot that on a 50. See how beautifully that's hitting her hair. You see the couple that's doing right. It's just like you just kind of train yourself to look around. I'm the same way. I'm so
you have
observant.
to take the ordinary, not for granted. And I used to call this thing before I even moved to Canada. I had like this interesting feeling, because I used to travel a lot with my family, that like if I'm in the city, I don't feel like I want to take the camera, but once I go to a new country, everything looks beautiful.
Yeah.
And then I was like, why? Because I always wanted to feel like a tourist in my own city, and over years of working professionally in the industry, I just feel that what we do, what you just described, is just the idea of being a tourist in your own space, in your own environment. Like for instance, I take a walk in a park near my home in Woodbridge every single day, or like I try to, and every single time I walk there, I take a new picture. And sometimes I'm even freak out. I'm like, how do I manage to take something new every single day in this park, even though I take a walk here every single day?
Interesting.
And the ability to see the ordinary things in a new way, whether it's new color in the sky, there's something in humidity, like something makes it look special depending on the season, or other reasons, and that's the ability to capture things.
Yeah. And then you kind of like I don't know if it's the same with you, but you kind of keep that in like your brain, like your memory bank of
that's what I do. So like the reason I love having an iPhone in my pocket, I know like a lot of people, you know, they get into like Fuji X Pro 3s, X Pro 2s, which I love. But for people that already have about 35 cases in their car just for the regular stuff they need to accomplish, honestly, it's a little bit like hard to even have an extra DSLR in my pocket. So when I remember when the iPhone 7 got released, and that was like one of the first iPhones that had a decent camera, in my opinion, then I was like, okay, like that's actually getting somewhere. Like we actually can have a little inspirational camera in the pocket. And I've been just collecting thousands of pictures, to be honest, like shooting on my iPhone, different locations, different lightings, and I save them all in my, I call them journals. And to be honest, it's super useful because, like, for instance, right now I'm working with a director on a few projects that just moved from Ukraine, and she's an amazing director, and she probably will be listening to this podcast too. But,
there you go.
Yeah, like she has a great vision, but she doesn't know Canada the way we do. So it was just amazing that I could just show her my swatch book kind of all those photos and be like, hey, pick any of those locations. They're all available. They'll have the tags. Just, scroll through those.
Very interesting.
And that was really helpful as well.
That's sweet. That's a good approach. I was asking that because when I'm taking photos, I'm not like I'm not like a photographer who's gonna go with their friends and like take photos of my friends and do all this stuff. Like I need to be alone, maybe listen to music, just like zoning in on whatever emotions I want to deal with, and I'm just like exploring the world by myself, and I can find frames and like different ways to, I guess, perceive the environment. But I can't really do that when I'm with other people. I find I have to be like alone, which is interesting.
That's so interesting because like everyone has such a different way of working, Like I like working around with a lot of people. I don't like being around people. That's the funny thing. I'm introverted, but when it comes to work, I love working around with a lot of people, and I love that team environment, that sets have. But the one thing that he was talking about, like even the way that he shoots, believe it or not, like I've known this guy for like 3 years now, just over 3 years, and I've only just seen his best photography.
Is it 3 years?
I think it's been 3 years.
No,
it's been 3 years.
Nah, probably 2.
2.5. 2.5. We'll meet in the middle. 2.5.
I'm not admitting with COVID years.
And so like I just saw his work and I was amazed because I didn't know that he had that in him, and I noticed that in his style of photography was very like unique. It was you can see the mood when someone's actually real. And he was telling me that when he took it, he was taking an emotional state. So when you take an emotional state, it's really authentic. It's really true.
It's also like I was also in like just a free state. Like I wasn't in Toronto at the time. I was in Vancouver, and I had to go for some family reasons, and I wasn't really focusing on work at the time. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna take a walk. I went on for like a 5-6 hour walk, just exploring the city, it was the most free I felt probably in years. So I was just in that, I guess, free space I could create like what I wanted.
The tourist, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So the same kind of mindset, which is interesting.
So let's go back to you building up your career. Like let's get into like the actual business of things. How did you get into getting yourself out there to the point where you are today? Did you go through a lot of like free work, or did you like kind of just target certain people that you wanted to work with and you went after?
It all greatly started when I just dropped film school, to be honest.
Oh, you're in film school. I didn't know that.
Yeah, it was okay. That was interesting. Yeah, it's because after high school I did grades 10, 11, 12 in Canada, all in like a year and a half. And then I applied for 3 different programs, film, journalism, and business, because, again, when you move here from a different country, your parents never expect you to just, be in film or be a musician.
Yeah, I know.
They want you to do business.
Yeah, Asian parents want me to be doctors and lawyers. Yeah.
We're so, common in that sense.
Yeah.
And, like, same with, like, my parents. They were, like, up until, point where, because I even had experience teaching at a Toronto Film School as a cinematography teacher. Until the point I did that, my dad was like still pushing me to go to school, and I'm like, wow. Dad, I'm like,
you're actually in school. You're teaching the school. Teaching students. That's hilarious.
But yeah, I got into business after school, and I absolutely hated it. I dropped business after the first semester. I had like a few instances with the professors just because I didn't love their like teaching approach and the attitude towards students. And then after that, I spent a year just working in labor. I had like a longing that. And that's something I wouldn't do if I stayed back home in Russia, because, my parents, obviously they would like, make me go to school or, have a better job with my brothers or like, keep me at a certain level. But since I was alone here, I just really wanted to be by myself and just figure out my own thing. So started doing all the labor jobs you can imagine in Canada as an immigrant, you know, painting, cleaning snow, doing dishes,
just save up money just to do what you want.
Pretty much, like, it was like I never really had any like problems with money in my head because I was always like okay to manage things, and as long as you work every day and it brings you like a certain income, you can afford things. But yeah, I wanted to like definitely get like a little bit more gear. Like I bought a A7R3, a few GM lenses. I had some lenses from the past because I started getting like glass when I was like 11 years old. So like I already had a few L series lenses by that time. And,
11-year-old with an L series lens.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like,
I'll be impressed if I see a little kid like with an L series and then Canon like 5D Mark IV or something. I'd be like,
I'd be intimidated.
I'd be like, okay, this kid's gonna be special.
I think
contracting that guy out.
I know. I'd be like,
do you want to
call
work?
him, when you're 16,
Cash.
give me a call.
Only cash. Only cash.
Honestly, it's like I see kids these days just getting so much faster to technology. I even have like, you know, friends that are gimbal ops and they're like 4-year-old kids are asking for like the Osmo Mobile or like the Osmo Pocket devices because those are like they're like, Daddy, what is this stick I can you know stabilize with? Dude, be like you. And I'm like, well. And you don't need to be a genius to figure out the pocket, right? You
Exactly.
Like,
it's very simple now. Like,
4-year-olds are, you know, they're impressive these days.
That's
like,
crazy.
That's crazy.
Yeah, oh my God. So from there, like, how did you get your first big gig? Like, what broke you into where you are
it's
right
actually,
now?
it's a story. It's a story. Wow. So after the year of, you know, building my path and getting all this, like, different skills, and I also used to work in moving companies, by the way. That was a great skill because now that I manage so much gear, I manage, you know, if it's even like camera trucks, you know, lighting trucks, and the experience working in moving companies, it was really helpful for that. And
I worked for UPS for 5 years, so I know it helps.
Like you just learn to be careful.
Organization and like take care of like how to lift things properly.
It's not even what you do; it's how you do it. What's your approach? You know, that's what defines you as a great professional. But first big gig, it was actually a super cool story. So after the year of that, I did get into film school, and the first year was interesting to me because I already like, and it's different from my home country the way it's in Canada, because in Russia, if you go to like a music school or a film school after high school, you already have to have a reel. You have, or as a musician, you have to be in conservatory, so you already have like, you know, you're performing in theaters, you know things. You go to upscale your knowledge as a director applying to film school. You already have at least a short film. You have a few, you know, things that you did. You can show them, and they'll be like, okay, we'll consider you. You know, they actually build like, you know, people there. Whereas in Canada, you go to film school, you write an essay, you come to class 1, they're like, name the subject, and they're like, it's a camera, and they're like, yeah, it's a camera, guys. You know, and then you just like learn everything from scratch, which again is important. But in my like to my level of passion that I had, I was like, damn, like I knew this thing since I was like 9. When I
feel like you're going backwards.
Literally, remember I mentioned that like manual for Canon 480D when I was a kid? That was year 1 in film school for the most part. Well, there were obviously a few things that were like helpful when, you know, they show you a YouTube video of how like you build a contrast ratio, and then they, you know, give you a plastic head and they're like, build a contrast ratio. Some film schools don't even do that. I was at Hamburg. That was, you know, at least like more technical, you know, showing the math, explaining the T-stops, you know, food candles and all those like other important notions of film. But the first big gig happened to me when I was taking my exam in the first year program for broadcast media. So I like, you know, they were kind of showing us how to use the ENG cameras professional with like the servo hands and other funky stuff. And someone just sent me a post on Instagram that a company or someone is looking for a first AC for a job tomorrow. So obviously I go and I Google what exactly is a first AC.
That's how we all learn. Google and YouTube.
And it shows me that, it's a camera assistant. And I'm like, okay, I can handle that. Yeah, right? I can handle that. Yeah. And then I replied to the post, and then I believe it was a live production. And the director called me. It was a union production from Jersey.
Oh.
And they're like, hey, so you're first AC? I'm like, yeah, you know, I'm just starting in the industry, not super, you know, don't know all the things, but I know some. they're like, what cameras do you have experience with? And I'm like looking at the huge ENG camera that I'm taking exam on. And again, on the exam in the first year, you don't have to build a camera. You literally just approach a ENG camera on like that huge tripod.
Yeah.
And it's already built. You just have to grab the right handle, the left handle, manage focus, and manage zoom.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Wow.
You just have to keep the anchor man in
Yeah,
frame. That's
yeah.
all you gotta do. And I'm like, yeah, I have experience with this camera. And they're like, oh wow, okay, that's big because
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
live production. And I'm like, well, I also know like FS 100 because that was the cameras we were using back in the day in film school, which is, you know, a bit worse than an iPhone, but still an FS series
Yeah.
camera. And surprisingly, that production that they were hiring for, they used FS5s, so which is like kind of in the same range of with the 100, just maybe like a decade behind, but
Yeah.
still in the same family.
Yeah.
And they're like, okay, so sure, we'll find something for you. It's a job for Milky Chance. It's a German band. I don't know if you guys know it.
No.
What do they have? They have. She used to be a stunner, running loud. I'll play it after. But
Okay,
it's a pretty popular,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
super popular
Okay.
German band. And I was like, oh shit, like okay, I know this guy's like I listen to their music.
Oh,
Oh,
yeah,
shit, like
that's crazy.
It's
Yeah.
big, yeah. And they're like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, by the way, it's in Montreal, and it's tomorrow. You have to be on set for like 11 a.m.
Ooh.
for the prep. And I'm like looking at the clock, and I'm like, oh shit, it's like 5 p.m. right now in Toronto. What do I do? So I go home. While I'm on the bus, I'm getting tickets to go to Montreal. I found one of the latest buses that, you know, I think like departs Toronto around like 7 p.m. and then comes to Montreal. I remember I came around like 1 a.m.
Yeah.
And then it brings me to the idea of, you know, like everything I've done in my life, it was never me. It was just a sequence of things that always, it's kind of like, you know, the journey over here. Like I always had helpers that helped me. And then in a particular situation, I happened to have one of my friends who lived in exactly the same condo that is located underneath the bus terminal in Montreal, because 2 a.m. in Montreal, it's cold as hell.
Yeah.
Like, where do I go, right? I don't have a hotel or anything. Like, I'm a student. I don't have any money as well.
Yeah.
And yeah, my friend literally lived in the same condo that is merged
Wow.
into the bus terminal. All I had to do, call her on the way when I was there. I'm like, Yulia, mind if I crash overnight? She's like, yeah, go for it.
Wow.
5 minutes up, I'm already upstairs, sleeping, getting ready for the job.
Yeah.
And the job was like insane money-wise. Like it was the most I ever got paid, you know, up until that day. I think it was like 650 USD for a student that never even been
really
on set
good.
before.
Yeah,
Yeah, I was
yeah,
like,
yeah. That's like,
and on the phone they're like, yeah, by the way, like we know you're coming from Toronto, but we can't cover, you know, transportation to Montreal. And I was like looking at the ticket, and it's like $80 ticket, and I'm like, yeah, don't worry, like I don't really care. Like obviously now it would be like different talk, but like back in the days I was like, what, 650 USD, and guys just like don't pay me, like, or like there's no need for transportation. But yeah, and I got to the job, and it was actually funny because the first 5 minutes on that stage was MTELUS, the biggest like Montreal concert hall they have. They're like, hey, can you grab that camera and can you bring it over here? And I'm like, which camera? And they're like, that one. And then they point at the build of a FS5 with a 50-1000 Canon lens, which up until this day, I remember it cost exactly $75,000, 132.
Holy
and I'm like, fuck. How do I grab? And it's like a huge lens
it's
too.
like a bazooka.
Yeah, it's literally a bazooka. And I'm like,
Yeah.
how the fuck do I grab that? And then there was this guy, amazing person. His name is Issa Shah. He's a Toronto-based DP as well. Great friend of mine. Amazing person. And he looks at me. He kind of like scans my my vibe. You know, he's like, dude, just grab it by the lens on the right, and you know, grab the back where the battery is. And I'm like, thank you.
That's a legendary
And
move.
that's how I met Issa. And I met his ex-partner back in the days. She was helping him as well on that set. And we started talking. He wasn't my operator. I was supposed to help. And luckily, you know, the production from Jersey, they were also like super chill. So they like, I told them what exactly they can do. They're like, okay, so here's like the plan of the setup. It's 8 cameras. You're going to be on the dolly camera. It's already built. They had like one guy who built all the cameras, and then ACs just needed, you know, like manage pushing the dolly, and also they like had a fiber chain from all the cameras just go into the truck so they can I guess like live cut it. So I just had to, you know, like make sure that like, you know, there's a 100-meter fiber cable and I had to like calculate 100 meters here, blah, blah, connect it all. Super easy. Just again, like film is a lot of common sense. As long as just, you know, you know your ground, you're chill, people are going to be super nice to you. And after the event, I just started talking to Isa, because he was also from Toronto. He was called for the job to operate. And literally told him my story that, you know, moved from Russia, just like in school right now, but school is super expensive. It was like $17,000. And I think I was already working actually, because I started doing club photography. So that was like one of my first like okay gigs when I was in film school. And it was like super challenging to do club photography, because I would cover shifts from Thursdays to Saturdays nighttime, and then Sunday would be like rooftop photography. So like it was crazy, because like Thursday, for instance, I would finish my job at like 3 a.m. and then I have to be 8 a.m. in class on Friday, and I didn't drive back in the day, so I had to like, you know, like a lack of sleep and just go to school. And 8 a.m. class was the class with the what's the name in English? The main guy in the film program at school, the dean.
Yeah, the dean.
The dean.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the dean.
So yeah, it was the class with the dean, and it was the history of film. But in essence, it was just like, you know, you come to class, you talk 15 minutes about a nice film, and then you watch an hour of that film, and then you're supposed to finish the rest at home. And then I'm like, why even come? And the problem is that like if you're late by any little amount of minutes to his class, he reduces your final mark. 5 minutes equals 5% of the final mark.
5%.
That's how nice that person was.
Holy
So
crap.
all my classes in film school were like above 80, except
Yeah.
that one class after my shifts on Friday that was like 52%, 53%.
Wow,
You know, like just enough to pass. Luckily, he
That's
didn't
crazy.
like, you know, put me down. But
Yeah.
yeah, so that was like really challenging for me to, you know, manage all that, because on one side, since I already had been doing photos for a while, I was like, okay, like I know kind of how you can make money in this, but at the same time, like it's hard to, especially as an immigrant, like you have to have some income, because otherwise you're just putting $17,000. And in film school we had 8 classes a week, so it's more than other programs, like, you know, business. It's a lot. And you don't get exams for all the classes. So like, you know, and like in lighting class, we had exam of like contrast ratios and stuff. But other than that, your exam in film school is just a short film that you do or a project you deliver in group.
Interesting.
So, but still, you don't have any time and you have to put money in projects. So I told all of that to Isa, and he was like, dude, you don't need that stuff. I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, dude, you already know your things. Like, I just saw how you know, like from scratch, you didn't chicken out, and you just like figured all this fiber stuff. You pulled a dolly, you got the job done. Like, you know, no one had a problem. You're fine, you know? And I was like, oh, really? No one ever told me that. Well, thank you. And at that point, it was interesting collision of things, because Isa just bought his Red Dragon Scarlet, and he was like also, you know, leveling up his skill of production as a cinematographer. So that's what he told me. He was like, dude, I just bought a Red, just buying a Nucleus M, like in a few, that was right when also Tilter announced the Nucleus M. So he's like, I just pre-ordered this thing. I heard it's sick. Because back in the days, it was also only like ARRI full focus pro.
Yeah, Tilta was one of the first to come up with like a value
Exactly,
one.
yeah. Because like, you know, like Prestons were like, you know, $14,000.
Yeah, exactly,
and the
yeah.
WCUs are like, you know, $5,000-$6,000. So he was like, hey, I just pre-ordered this new cool thing. No one has it yet, but like, you know, I need you to pull focus. I'm like, to do what? He's like, you know, just make sure things are in focus. So I'm like, okay. So I started working with Isa and following him. I did a few projects, you know, just, you know, for free. I think it was like maybe like a month or two. And then he's like, dude, like you're really good, you know, with figuring things out. So I have this project. You'll need to do this, and that. And they can pay you this amount of money. I'm like, okay, sick. And then he bought the Nucleus, and he's like, okay, so we have this like one project. It's a short film. The budget is low, but there's a Nucleus, and here's the video. Tomorrow you have to figure it out. I'm like, wow, okay, sure. And I still remember the shot he wanted me to pull, first time ever holding a follow focus in my hands.
Yeah.
He wanted me to do the dolly zoom where he pulls out, and I have to, because Nucleus has three motor controls at the same time, right?
Yeah.
So I was like, first time ever holding a follow focus. I'm like, I have to do what? He's like, yeah, you just put a mark here. And I watched the YouTube video, but he's like, yeah, you put the mark here, put this here. You just spin the zoom wheel and you spin the focus at the same time, and you do the shot. I'm like, damn. So that's how I learned how to be a first AC. And then I started, like Issa had more projects. I met like other great first AC. I think like one of the first ones were Brendan Reitsma, who's currently working as a great professional at OC and manages his own like shooting stuff. And I met Michael Liu, who's currently Steadicam operator and a great friend of mine as well. But back in the days, he was a first AC, and those guys were so chill.
Yeah.
And they taught me a lot of things, and I like started working as second AC, first AC. And after some time, Issa introduced me to a lot of other people, and I started meeting a lot of people and started shooting. Like I was already shooting at that time on my A7R3. I started doing some documentaries for CBC. Just met a few producers on I Need Producer Facebook page, because back in the days that page was popping. Now, I honestly just deleted Facebook like some while ago. I don't know how it is, but back in the days it was like you could
just going
find
off,
out
really?
actual jobs. Yeah,
Interesting.
I remember like some days like as a first AC, like I didn't have a car and I would like kill for any gig.
Yeah.
I would do like some crazy efforts. Like I remember this one job I accepted in Hamilton, not even in Hamilton, because like when you don't have a car, Hamilton is just the bus terminal to you, right? Like that job was like 60 or 70 kilometers away from the bus terminal. That was like beyond Hamilton to me.
Yeah.
So I had to like wake up, and I just bought my first monitor. That was like one of my first like purchases after getting the A7R3, and just kind of like started getting things. I love getting things. I get things every month now.
Yeah.
But back in the days, it was like, okay, I have this monitor. It's in a Pelican case.
Yeah, one thing at a time, and you're so excited for it.
I gotta wake up, and the job was like call time. I think it was like 8 or 8 a.m.
Yeah.
And I lived near downtown, so I had to like wake up at like 3 or 4 a.m. Go to Union Terminal, take the first bus to go to Hamilton, arrive to Hamilton for like 5 a.m. It's still about like 2 or something hours before the job starts. So then I grab my Pelican case, because that's my little treasure box. I go to Tim Hortons. I literally sit down by the table as a freaking homeless person. I sleep on my Pelican case to make sure no one steals it from me, because it's Hamilton, right? Yeah. And like then the lady touches me. She's like, "You can't sleep here." I'm like, "Why?" She's like, "No people are allowed to sleep here at all." I'm like, "But I'm not a homeless person." She's like, "I don't care. You have to go." And I'm like, fuck. And then I have to like leave Tim Hortons, and I wait outside for a few hours, and then I like take Uber to that 70 kilometer.
So you don't sleep. You just essentially just
like I slept a bit at home. Oh, it's sometimes like, dude, what a sleep. I wanted that job. Like I just wanted to get it done.
Yeah.
And like
That's
I had
amazing.
things like that.
Yeah.
And then, over years, just started doing more of those, more ACing, operating. Issa bought a Movi as well, because I kept working with Issa for like a lot of time. He bought a Movi Pro, and that was the first gimbal that I learned to balance, which is crazy, because Ronin 1 already existed back in the day. But like again, like all these kids these days, they get freaking Osmo mobiles. They get like Ronin S, that thing balances in like 2 minutes.
Yeah, exactly.
And like I started with Movi. Like I learned how to do Movi, and I was like, damn, after this, I'm ready for anything.
Yeah. That's crazy. So now you become a cinematographer as well. Like you do lots of DP gigs. What's your approach when you're going into set? What's like the first thing you look for as a DP, both in pre-production and production and post-production?
I honestly just really love to be prepared, whether it's run and gun style, because I do a lot of like documentary, kind of like, those like commercials where like you have to build a story around people, and then like a little bit of narrative, a little bit of, voiceover and other stuff. Or if it's like a commercial project, honestly, just love to be prepared, love to have my sketches done.
How do you prepare then? What do you usually do?
It all starts with the scouting. Obviously, I take like before scouting, it starts with mood boards, and I use Shot Deck a lot for visual references. And after Shot Deck and scripts are done, we go scouts. You take pictures. I always either LiDAR scan or have like a electric measure thing, measure all the locations. And then I bring them to 3D softwares. I use Previs on my iPad, as well as like obviously the Artemis, but that's more so just like for a visualizer with the lens. And then in Previs, I build a location in 3D, and there I can kind of like sit down with the director and with my own self and just kind of like, move the camera around, tweak the props, and just, like like know the like the positions of the camera. I want to do throw some lighting because it's kind of like it works similar to a scene tracer, and there's like you can put a few fixtures there. They have some quality of them, but it's not like it's like Blender but minimized version.
Interesting. Okay.
And yeah, I usually like build all the storyboards and 3D plans in Previs, and then just you know, I do my gear lists. I know some like DPs that don't really love to deal with rentals, but I also have big experience working with rental houses because I used to be manager at Ontario Camera for Genie department, and that's how I kind of like approach, you know, doing my own rental thing as well. So whenever I build my lists, I usually strive to either like point PMs to particular rental, you know, rentals that I know, or like, you know, come to my own rental. So yeah, usually that's the approach. And then on the day, just I also really love to surround myself obviously with professionals that are like tech professionals that are more so my friends than
people that you enjoy working with.
Yeah, like not even enjoy it. Honestly, it's like I don't have any friends. Like I have a few friends outside of film industry, but like I'd say like 95% of my friends are people I work with. So it's like it's a family thing. It's a lifestyle.
It is.
I don't just work, right? You know, you come to a job and we do our thing. That's all we do.
Yeah, for sure. So how involved are you in the post production? Do you work with colorists? Do you color your own stuff? What do you? I
do like obviously we all know like certain level of DaVinci, and I have like a monitor. I even have like the calibrator and stuff. But with post production, honestly, I don't really care about like the actual editing as much, because I know there's like so many other people that
the visuals what matters to you.
So many clients, so many people. I'm like, guys, just figure what do you need, whatever sells, dude. When it comes to coloring, I usually just come back to the treatment or the mood board, depending on which we did, or if we did both. Usually the mood board from Shot Deck, and I just come to my trusted colorists, and we just like sit down and we develop some looks.
Oh, so you have a colorist that you're...
I have a few colorists that I'm working with. I have a few colorists overseas, depending on the budget of the project. I have a few colorists that work in the city.
Oh, nice. Okay, cool. Well, we've talked about your work. Let's take a look at some of it, because I know we're going to lose track of time. So many things I want to talk about. I really want to talk about film school, because I didn't know you went to film school. I would have put that down as a topic, because very, very curious about that.
I'm glad I managed to honestly drop it and just do the thing, because again, like even these days at our company we get a lot of interns, and I obviously like we always bring newer people on set, and just the amount of things they don't know, or like some common sense things they don't know, I'm just like freaking out. The other day I was working with a guy, and like he just graduated from a film school, and he was just following me on a job with a gimbal, and I was like, hey, can you like quickly wipe the lens? And he was about to like spray on the lens. And I'm like, what do you do? He's like, well, how do you clean a lens? I'm like, dude, you just graduated from film school, man. Like,
they don't teach you that stuff.
They don't teach you.
I've had a couple of film students message me one time, and one of our friends that we have went to film school, or still going to film school, and they went on a little student film set, and he told me like, how do you put the sky panel on a stand? And I said, no, that's a junior pin. You can't put it on a regular stand, right? And he's like, what's a junior pin? I'm just like, oh god. So I have to Google and be like, how far back we have to go? Yeah. Here? Like who's like, what do you guys learn in film school? And then he sent a picture of. They took a.
Oh my god! I saw
they took a tripod with a ball head. They put the sky panel through the ball head, and then they gaff taped it all the way around. And so that was their stand for the S60. I sat there, I'm like, oh my god.
I think we probably still have the pictures for that.
We probably still have the photos. If I can find that, I'll put them up on the screen.
That's some shitty rigs.
I couldn't believe that. Beyond that. That is like next level. Like, okay, I'm starting to wonder what they teach you in film school.
It's a lot of like, I went to Ryerson for a year, and it's a lot of like high level stuff, but like, it's like anything from school. 90% of it doesn't apply to the rest of your life. You know what I mean?
Interesting.
Like, do you remember any of the stuff from high school? I feel like it's the same approach in film school. Like, you learn the basics. Most of it you already know if you're like passionate about it before that. Yeah. But you learn the most working. So.
Yeah, like I do know some people from film schools that were putting maybe like 150% the effort, and they ended somewhere. But it's not the film school that puts you places, as your effort, and film school is just pretty much access to gear and studio.
And network, I guess, a little, because at least you could,
that
meet people.
Totally depends on the year, the school, and like so many other factors that like.
Fair enough. But some of it's also, I hear a lot of it's theory, from my understanding, And I don't know how important theory is to people, but to me, I feel like theory is something you do on your own time. Like you know what I mean? Like,
I also feel like it just depends on how much effort you're willing to put into what you do.
yeah,
Because I remember like there were some kids, because again, like I lived not far from school. It was like about an hour, or like, you know, if you bike about an hour as well.
yeah,
But at Hamburg, film students were the only students allowed to stay overnight because we had to do our renders and stuff in the media studio.
yeah,
So like I used to live in school. I used to like practically stay there, just like figuring out Avid, learning, like
Wow.
upscaling my Adobe skills. Because again, like they had like a few Adobe classes like by the time I was in school.
Yeah.
You know, and you like open Illustrator and the professor explains you how to do like a vector. Like I didn't want to do that shit. I really
Yes.
wanted to do like logos and stuff. And like looked at it like, oh, how do you learn that? I'm like, well, I'm just living here now. Like,
Wow.
just, you know, I need the computer.
Yeah. Interesting.
It was like that at Ryerson too, because at Ryerson, I'm not sure if you ever shot on film or edited film, but we had like these editing bays next to what they called the cage, where the equipment was, and we were just there all night cutting our film, splicing it together. It's a crazy experience in film school. You don't sleep at all. It's kind of like the industry. So
Yeah.
Interesting.
It brings you closer to it. But yeah, like
it does.
you know, some people, they just, I don't want to say they don't have what it takes, but it takes a lot.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of
yeah,
it.
it takes a lot. I mean, we're definitely get into that. I really want to show your work. It seems like we might have lost connection here on the TV. That's a shame.
Talking for too long, I got bored. fell
I
asleep.
think the TV just decided, hey, we're not going to work anymore.
I haven't
This is
updated my website in some while, but
So maybe if I just turn it off.
it's been a
turn it
crazy
back on.
summer too.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I did a one take short film recently.
Really?
Yeah, it was a pretty fun thing.
How long was
That's
the short
crazy.
It's a 16-minute film.
16?
All static.
16? One sec.
Yeah, all
One
one
take.
location.
It was a oneer.
It was a shot as a oneer. There's a few cuts hidden
Yeah,
on
yeah.
motion because didn't want to
Yeah,
kill
yeah,
my
yeah.
Steadicam up. But
It's very
Holy.
Roger Deakins-y.
Yeah.
Trying to do that 1917 type
it
of
was
thing.
it was an interesting approach as well, because like for that project I like spent a few weeks just developing the whole like visual like flow in the 3D software.
Yeah.
And like showing those like renderings to my Steadicam guy, like doing some samples on the Ronin S, just kind of like so he has the idea.
Yeah.
And just figuring out blocking and then like lighting and sound for one take film, because nothing changed throughout the shot. Like
Yeah.
we never like moved microphones or reposition lights, because we wanted that feeling of one take, and like had to tape the hell out of the ceiling with the stairs, like all on
Yeah.
Velcro. I had some
Really?
lights on the Steadicam as well.
Oh, wow.
So
Oh,
the guy was
wow.
operating with the light on it. Yeah, so you
Holy
have
crap.
some feel, because everything's overhead, right? So
Yeah,
like
yeah.
you got like all the
Wow.
shadows.
Because you have to, get everything
Yeah.
off the ground. Yeah.
So I used like a DMG dash with a DOT.
Yeah.
Luckily, Roscoe, by the way, like again, like once you do things, like you can reach out to all the shops, rental house, and then just like
Yeah.
tell them like, I have this crazy idea, give me your shit for free, and they're like, okay.
Wow, interesting.
So yeah, they gave me a pack of those DMG dashes just for like testing, and I was like,
Wow.
perfect, yeah.
So this is rather unfortunate. We can't pull up the work, unfortunately.
Oh, no.
Which really sucks. Hopefully, maybe we can do this again. There's so many things I want to talk about. One more thing I want to touch on before we go. We are running out of time, but I do want to touch on it. Maybe perhaps next time we can actually break down your work, because that is part of something
Absolutely,
that I
yeah.
do want to be part of. Like I really would love your insight on how you did things. But one last segment I want to add in is pretty much your advice to people coming into this industry. People who have that passion but are scared to kind of do this. You came from a different country, you came at a young age, and you built yourself up from that. That's not easy. Like someone might have a similar story where perhaps they're an immigrant as well, or they're coming out of school and don't know what to do, right? So what is your advice, your best advice you can give to the young people coming in the industry?
I would say, I always can talk forever about it, to be honest, but just put yourself mentally in the position that you're already there, and that you're already, friends with all the people that are you want to work with. Obviously, don't like body them, but just kind of like mentally put yourself that you're already on the scale. Because when I moved originally, and like first years in Canada, I remember I used to work at the shisha restaurant that also run late in downtown, like 2 a.m. And I remember leaving the place and walking through Dundas Square and seeing all those billboards, and just feeling this weird feeling of belonging there. I was like, yeah, this is all cool, but like I was so young, and I'm like, they were all so tall looking at me, and I'm like, I know that one day I'm gonna be hanging out with all these people. Will be my people. I'll be shaking hands, and like like I also, for instance, like I work with the house right now, like the EXO thing. And I remember like when I moved here, I'm like, oh wow, there's like this people, you know, and like, you know, over time you just like, you know, you just kind of like meet them and they're just real humans. And I know that mentally I was always in my position that I'm there, you know, I'm worth it. I'm good. I will learn. I can bring things, but you're there, you know.
Yeah.
You don't have to think that, you know, there's like miles between you. You're there. Just be cool, do your thing, and it all gonna come. And don't be afraid to try things, because again, as you mentioned originally, like I do different positions, and like I'm super young, by the way. Like I'm super young.
Yeah.
So it's like,
How old are you again?
I'm 24.
Yeah.
I still can't believe that. I still can't.
I'm 25 and I feel
I
old.
still can't believe that. He's lying. He's
I know.
lying.
Well, he started when he was 2.
Because like eventually I know
That's
that
crazy.
I'm gonna quit, obviously one day, like, you know, gaffing and like doing other things, and
You eventually want to focus on something.
only cinematography. I don't even
Yeah.
want to touch the camera. Like
Oh, okay.
eventually I just like, I will probably operate some shots in my future life, but
Yeah.
I really love just, you know, sitting and planning, and just, you know, I love DMX. I operate DMX. I have like Red Pack and other kits, and I just love, you know, being by the monitor and seeing what happens, so I can focus fully on that. But the path I'm taking right now, and I think it's gonna finish in like next maybe year or so, is I started as a first AC, or like between photography. I started as
Yeah.
a first AC. I finished that path. I still first AC occasionally on like features and like even commercials. But then I obviously like started shooting my own thing. Then I got more into gaffing, because I realized in my DP projects, or like, you know, like medium commercial projects that I do, I always kind of like struggle with figuring out my own lighting. So I just threw myself into gaffing.
Yeah.
And then over years in gaffing, I already did like 8 feature films, and like I do big commercials, ACCP, all the brand names I ever wanted to work with, I work with right now.
Amazing.
And yeah, like, so it's kind of like, you know, being DP is like being Avatar.
Yeah.
Because like I know a lot of young DPs that are, you know, they're doing their great thing, but like they are lacking the actual knowledge of working in the positions of
Yeah.
people that they're hiring. And
Yeah.
I feel that a lot, because like people hire me and they just like realize so much on what I do, and I'm like, guys, like I know you're, you know, like,
Yeah.
you need to know
You need
these
to
things.
learn
Yeah.
these things.
Yeah.
Very
And
interesting.
with gaffing and like all these positions, I'm just like building my avatar as, you know, as like the airbender.
Yeah, exactly.
I've always been a believer in that as well, to understand at least each and every position, especially when you're a DP.
It's
Especially if you're a
important to
director.
master. It's important how much,
To
you know, like,
understand them too,
Yeah.
right? To communicate with them and to relate with them, you have to understand how much work they're putting in, to appreciate them fully.
Because like sometimes I work with like not even DPs, I work with like photographers and other DPs, and like, you know, it gets super crazy where, you know, they would just show me a picture on Pinterest and be like, can you do it like this?
Wow.
And I'm like, yeah. Well, like,
Yeah.
do you know what you
You
actually
know,
want?
yeah, all the time. Oh my God,
And
is
then
that
I just
ever a
like
story of
start
life?
saying what it's gonna be, but
Yeah.
like I admire working with some great DPs where I feel collaborative project like idea. Just, you know, they're like, hey, we want this. Can we hang this here? And I'm like, yeah, but we can also take this source and put it like this, and
So
then I
much
can
more
program it
collaborative
like that,
that way, yeah.
and then it becomes amazing. Yeah,
Yeah,
like I
yeah.
have like great collaboration with some DPs,
Yeah.
but some projects that I take, they're like, yeah, like, can I take this camera? I might want to take this lens and that lens. And I'm like, yeah, this lens, if you take, is going to give you blue flares, and that
Yeah,
lens
yeah.
is going to be that. And then I realized that I'm like, you know, literally pushing them. And
Yeah,
I'm like,
yeah.
nah, I don't want to do this all my life.
100%.
I feel
Yeah.
you, man. But it's amazing what you've done at your age. It's
Thank you, yeah.
crazy. I
8
honestly
feature
respect
films?
it. 8 feature films. Working with big name
I
commercials.
mean, some of those were MOWs,
you
which
know,
are,
yeah.
but still.
I mean, we still got to find out if you're really 24 years old. We're gonna maybe you know look deeper.
Gotta
into
shave the
that.
beard, and then as you'll see it.
No. But honestly, like, no. Thank you so much for spending your
Pleasure,
time here,
yeah.
man.
Thank you for having
sharing
me.
your story. There's so much I wish I could have
I
dug
know.
into, and we ran out of time, unfortunately. And unfortunately, I wish I could have shown your work and break it down, because I really wanted to do that.
I guess you can leave some
But,
links.
yeah, we'll leave the links to your stuff, your IGs, and ways to follow you. Yeah, I hope everyone learned a lot from this, and yeah, I appreciate you coming, man.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Create.
All right.